Since the 1980s, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles have dominated all corners of media, everything from comics to live-action movies to toys and beyond. Kids as well as adults just could not get enough of the Rat Master Splinter and the adventures of his four sons, and rightly so. From the very first few pages of the Daredevil-inspired book, you can tell that this story is going to be something special. With a blood feud that goes back years, it's up to the four brothers to avenge their master's master from the evil Foot Clan and their leader, the Shredder, which in my opinion has always been the most interesting storyline throughout TMNT history. So it blew me away to learn that the most popular villain in all of Turtles media almost was a one-off. Hello, and welcome to Latveria Library, where I talk about all my favorite comic book stories, characters, and lore. Today, we will be going through the origin of Oroku Saki, aka the Shredder, as well as his creation and how he was almost just a one-off villain to propel the story forward. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications if you enjoy the content, and let's get into it. The Shredder, of course, was created by Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, premiering in the very first issue of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in 1984. The idea for the character came about while the two creators were washing dishes. Kevin had been drying off a metal cheese grater when he stuck his hand inside, turns to Peter and says, "Can you imagine a bad guy with a cheese grater weapon on his forearms?" Continuing to call the villain Great Man, when Peter, who I think we all are thankful for, suggested the Shredder. In the very first issue, we learn the history of the character and his connections to the Turtles. That starts with Oroku Saki's older brother Nagi and Splinter's owner Hamato Yoshi. Both masters were in the Foot Clan, a group of the most feared warriors and assassins throughout Japan, and were actually rivals who would compete against each other in pretty much everything, including the love of a young woman named Tang Shin. But Tang Shin only had eyes for one man, Splinter's master, Yoshi. Even so, this did not stop Nagi. One night in a jealous rage, he went to her home and demanded she love him. When she refused, he began to beat her. Luckily, Yoshi arrived just in time before Nagi could do irreparable damage. Rage filled the young martial artist when he saw what his rival had done, so much so he could not stop himself, ultimately killing Nagi. After the rage had subsided, Yoshi felt great shame for what he had done. He had dishonored himself and his clan, which left him with two options: either take his own life or start anew with Tang Shin. Yoshi chose the latter and started over with the love of his life in New York. So now this is where Oroku Saki, the younger brother, comes into play. While the rest of the Nagi family mourned, the 7-year-old Saki was vowing vengeance on his brother's killer. Right then and there, he began intense training in the ninja arts that lasted for years, slowly working himself up the ranks of the Foot Clan, and by the time he was 18, Saki had become their best assassin and was chosen to lead the New York branch of the Foot Clan. Finally, the pound of flesh he so desperately seeks was nearly in his grasp. Now, fast forward a year, and the New York branch had been thriving under Saki, now known as the Shredder. If it was illegal, the Foot had a hand in it. Drug smuggling, arms running, and of course assassinations, all while hunting for his brother's murderer and his wife. The hatred he felt still burned as bright as the day he vowed revenge as a child, and would not be satisfied until he had it. A little while later, in exactly 15 years from the current TMNT timeline, the Shredder had finally tracked them down. With the cover of night, he moved through the buildings quick and silent. Tang Shin was unfortunate enough to be home at the time, and so was the first to feel the cold, sharp end of the Shredder's blade, after he waited in the silent shadows of the apartment for his real target. Yoshi never in a million years expected what he found when he got home from work. The love of his life lay silent on the floor, and not far off, her killer standing in the dark shadows covered in bladed armor from head to toe. The two men struggled for a short time, smashing the cage that held Splinter, but ultimately, the Shredder was victorious. Which now brings us to 15 years later, and the Turtles, who have now surpassed their own master, are finally ready. They send out a challenge to the Shredder, a duel to the death to avenge their master's master, ending this over 20-year blood feud. Though the Shredder did not come alone. He is joined by an entire army of foot ninjas that surround the turtles on all sides. But the brothers were confident in their training and did not fear their enemies. Though they may be many, our heroes were more than ready. Also, it really helps to have a shell. It probably saved their lives more than once in this fight. The Shredder was somewhat surprised these 4 giant turtles were able to take out his finest warriors, but then again, they were still just students. Who the brothers faced now was the Master. Confidently, he tells the brothers they were more than welcome to attack all at once, but they chose to go one at a time, with the Shredder taking each of them out with ease. It wasn't until they all worked together as a unit that the tides began to turn. The 4 turtles would take turns striking fast and moving away, striking fast and moving away. It was way too much for the Shredder to keep up with, which ultimately led to Leo's blade through his stomach. The fight was over, but the brothers, despite everything Orokusaki had done to their family, still gave him a chance to redeem himself by committing seppuku. But the arrogant Master rejected their kindness, deciding he would not die alone, thus revealing a hidden grenade and pulling the pin. Luckily, he is knocked off the roof by Donnie before it could blow, and the Shredder was dead before he hit the ground. The only thing left from the explosion was one of Orokusaki's arm blades, thus ending the reign of the Shredder in a feud that goes back years. Now, though the turtles do come into conflict with the Foot every so often, it's very obvious that the Shredder was never supposed to return, even though Kevin and Peter never actually say those words. They do, however, allude to it in interviews. For example, here is a quote from an interview with Peter Laird, which he says, "Though many fans of the original, first animated series see the Shredder as a really important part of an ongoing, long-running battle with the Turtles, I don't think Kevin or I ever did. Yes, he was an important part of their history, and they probably would have not come into existence without his involvement in their world, but that's about it. Other than bringing Shredder back for Return to New York, I never missed him in any other TMNT books I worked on." End quote. Though even wanting to bring him back for Return to New York is debatable in my opinion, since around 1988, the second season of the animated series had just exploded in popularity, along with the first rumblings of a live-action movie. This is important to note, since, unlike the comics, the Shredder had become the main villain in the animated series, and was wildly popular. Also around the time, it was announced that the Shredder would be the main villain in the first movie. Now, around the first season of the animated show, which was already beginning to gain some popularity, we see the Shredder come back in the Leonardo one-shot, What Goes Around Comes Around, where he faces off against the Foot Clan and their revived leader by himself, nearly costing him his life, which continues into the mainline story where Casey Jones and the other Turtles join the fight, but ultimately are forced to flee to the Jones farm. This story eventually leads into the Return to New York storyline, where in the 3rd volume, or 21st issue, the brothers confront the Shredder once more, where he explains, "Through ancient practices, the Foot were able to take pieces of his body that were left after the explosion and bring him back to life, along with creating the Shredder Elite Assassins by utilizing a type of worm that learns from and grows into what it eats." Now, I'm not saying it's 100% confirmed that because of the growing popularity of the Shredder and the Turtles that the two creators brought back the evil master of the Foot in the most ridiculous way possible. Literally, the Turtles comics have been goofy and insane from the beginning, so a worm clone of Shredder would be on brand for the series. But I will say, it does sort of seem that way. I've been seeing this debated for years, and honestly, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, because if they hadn't brought him back, who knows? Maybe the Shredder would have been forgotten and never became such an iconic villain. Maybe we would have never gotten the masterpiece that is The Last Ronin. So I, for one, am thankful they brought back Orokusaki for more stories. And with that, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications if you enjoy the video. It really does help, more than you know. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next.